The command center of the Zephyrian battleship, Eternal Wisdom, hummed with a quiet efficiency that had made their species the premier peacekeeping force in the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Admiral Kethvar stood before the massive viewing screen, his forearms folded in a gesture that indicated both contemplation and mild concern. His silver scales caught the blue light from the navigation displays as he studied the readings before him. "Admiral," came the voice of his tactical officer, Sub-Commander Yethal, "we're receiving the transmission again. Same frequency, same primitive encryption. The beings, calling themselves humans, are requesting what they term first contact protocols." Kethvar's secondary arms gestured dismissively. "How many times has this been now?" 47, sir. "Over the past 3 rotations." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his people. The Zephyrians had been monitoring this sector for decades, watching the primitive bipeds on the third planet slowly develop their crude technology. They had observed the species' tendency toward violence, their chaotic social structures, and their laughably inefficient resource management. By all galactic standards, they were at least 500 years away from being ready for contact with the greater galactic community. "Sir," Yethal continued, "they appear to have detected our long-range surveys. Their transmission includes references to unusual readings and artificial gravitic signatures in their outer system." This gave Kethvar pause. Their survey ships used advanced cloaking technology that had never been detected by any pre-spaceflight civilization. "The humans shouldn't have been able to notice anything at all." "Impossible," he said finally. "Their technology is barely capable of crude fusion reactions. They haven't even established permanent colonies beyond their home planet. Nevertheless, sir, their message specifically mentions the gravitational anomalies we know our ships would create." Kethvar turned from the screen to face his tactical officer. Yethal was young but competent and not given to exaggeration. If she said the humans had detected something, then perhaps they had simply been fortunate enough to notice some secondary effect of the survey missions. "Very well," the Admiral decided. "Signal the Council of Species. Inform them that the humans appear ready for preliminary contact assessment. We'll follow standard first contact protocols." What Kethvar didn't know was that the humans had been tracking Zephyrian ships for 6 months. What he couldn't have known was that the seemingly primitive species had developed sensor technology that worked on principles entirely foreign to galactic science. What he absolutely could not have imagined was that the humans had already begun preparing for the possibility of hostile first contact. 3 days later, the Eternal Wisdom approached Earth's solar system with a full diplomatic convoy. 12 ships in total, representing the major species of the Galactic Council. The plan was simple and had been executed successfully with 47 other species over the past millennium. Appear in the outer system, demonstrate superior technology, establish communication, and begin the careful process of evaluation and integration. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, humanity's first and only deep space combat vessel. Unlike the elegant flowing lines of the Zephyrian ships, the Defiance was a brutal, angular construction of armor plating and weapon systems. It looked exactly like what it was, a machine built by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history fighting for survival. "Alien fleet holding position at Jupiter's orbital distance," reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the sensor station. 12 vessels, configuration unknown, but they're maintaining a standard diplomatic formation. "Any threatening moves?" Chen asked. "No, ma'am. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Looks like they're trying to establish communication." Chen nodded, but her expression remained grim. Humanity had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment, ever since their deep space monitoring stations had detected the aliens' survey missions. Unlike every other species in galactic history, humanity's first response to discovering they weren't alone wasn't wonder or fear. "Signal Admiral Patel on Luna Base," Chen ordered. "Tell him the waiting is over. Operation Pandora is now active. Across the solar system, concealed weapons platforms came online. On Earth's moon, massive railgun installations emerged from camouflaged bunkers. In the asteroid belt, automated defense drones that had been disguised as mining equipment began moving toward intercept positions. On Mars, the skeleton crews of research stations revealed themselves to be the advanced guard of a species that had never met a problem it couldn't solve with superior firepower. Admiral Kethvar received the first human transmission exactly 18 minutes after arriving at the edge of their solar system. The delay itself was puzzling. Most species were eager to respond immediately to first contact. When the message finally came through, it was even more perplexing. The human who appeared on screen was clearly the leader of their space forces. She wore a military uniform that indicated rank and authority, and her bearing suggested competence. But her first words weren't the usual expressions of wonder or fear that Kethvar had heard from dozens of other species. "This is Admiral Rebecca Patel of the United Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in human sovereign space. Identify yourselves immediately and state your intentions, or you will be considered hostile." The silence in the Zephyrian command center stretched for nearly a full minute. In 3,000 years of first contact protocols, nothing like this had ever happened. Species might be cautious, they might be confused, they might even be frightened, but they were never immediately aggressive. "Admiral," Ethal said quietly, "their transmission included detailed scans of our ships. They shouldn't have sensors capable of penetrating our hull shielding." Kethvar studied the human leader on his screen. There was no deference in her posture, no indication that she was intimidated by the obvious technological superiority of the alien fleet. If anything, she looked like she was evaluating them as potential threats. "Greetings," he began, following the standard protocol. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Peacekeeping Forces. We represent the Galactic Council of Species and have come to make peaceful contact with your civilization. There is no need for concern about our presence here." The human admiral's response was immediate. "That's not how this works, Admiral. You entered our space without permission and without announcing your intentions. In human culture, that's an act of war. You have exactly 1 hour to provide a full explanation of your presence here and your long-term intentions regarding humanity, or we will assume you are hostile scouts and act accordingly." "Act accordingly?" Kethvar couldn't hide his incredulity. "Admiral Patel, I believe you may not understand the situation. Our ships are equipped with technology far beyond your current capabilities. We are here to help your species join the galactic community." "I understand the situation perfectly, Admiral. You've been spying on us for months. You entered our space without permission. You're now making vague threats about your superior technology. From our perspective, you're behaving exactly like a hostile invasion force trying to intimidate us into surrender." The human admiral leaned forward slightly, and Kethvar was struck by the complete absence of fear in her expression. "Let me be very clear about something, Admiral. Humanity doesn't surrender. We don't bow down to superior technology. And we definitely don't appreciate uninvited guests making demands in our own home. So I suggest you start explaining yourselves, or start leaving." Kethvar found himself at a complete loss. Every first contact scenario in Zephyrian training assumed the primitive species would be awed by advanced technology, and grateful for the opportunity to join galactic civilization. The protocols didn't include provisions for a species that immediately began making threats. "Sub-Commander," he said quietly, "are you detecting any weapon systems on their ships?" Yethal checked her displays, then checked them again. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout their system, but I can't identify the source. Their single visible ship appears to be heavily armed, but the weapons aren't based on any technology in our database. Could they actually pose a threat to us?" "Sir, they're a pre-spaceflight civilization. By definition, they can't have anything that could damage our ships." Kethvar wasn't entirely convinced. Something about the human admiral's confidence suggested she knew something he didn't. But Yethal was right. It was physically impossible for a species this primitive to have developed weapons capable of threatening Zephyrian technology. "Admiral Patel," he said, returning his attention to the screen, "I appreciate your concerns, but I think there may be some misunderstanding. We are peaceful explorers and diplomats. Our technology could benefit your species enormously. Surely we can find a way to discuss this reasonably." "The reasonable thing would have been to announce yourselves before entering our space," Patel replied. "Since you chose not to do that, we're now in a situation where we have to assume hostile intent. You have 47 minutes remaining to convince us otherwise." "And if we don't?" The human admiral's smile was cold and completely devoid of warmth. "Then you'll discover why the rest of the universe should be afraid of humanity, Admiral. And trust me, that's not a lesson you want to learn the hard way." Kethvar cut the transmission and turned to face his senior staff. The expressions on their faces mirrored his own confusion and growing concern. "Opinions?" he asked. "They're clearly more advanced than our initial surveys indicated," said Science Officer Thalen. "But they still can't pose a genuine threat to our fleet. Their behavior is unprecedented," added Diplomatic Attaché Zeril. "I've studied the first contact records of every species in the Council. Nothing like this has ever happened before." "Recommendations?" Commander Vexon, the ship's security chief, spoke up. "Sir, if they are genuinely hostile, we should probably withdraw and request a full military assessment before proceeding. Primitive or not, their behavior is consistent with a species preparing for combat." Kethvar considered this. The conservative approach would be to retreat and report back to the council. But he had a perfect record of successful first contacts, and he was reluctant to let his reputation be tarnished by a species of primitive aliens making empty threats. "We'll hold position and continue diplomatic efforts," he decided, "but have all ships ready for immediate withdrawal if necessary, and begin deep scans of their system. If they do have hidden capabilities, I want to know about them." What the deep scans revealed over the next 30 minutes defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about technological development. The human solar system was filled with military installations. Massive weapons platforms were concealed throughout the asteroid belt. The moon harbored gun emplacements that appeared to be capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Mars hosted what appeared to be an entire military-industrial complex. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to have anticipated exactly this scenario. Their defensive positions weren't hastily constructed in response to the alien arrival. They were clearly the result of months of careful planning and preparation. "Sir," Yethal reported, her voice strained, "I'm detecting over 300 individual weapons platforms throughout their system. Most of them have been disguised as civilian installations." "How's that possible?" Kethvar demanded. "They've barely achieved orbital flight." "I don't know, sir. But the energy readings are consistent with weapons technology we've never encountered before." The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more hidden human installations revealed themselves. Red icons appeared across the system like a rash, each one representing a potential threat to his fleet. "Sir," Communications Officer Pithar called out, "we're receiving another transmission from the human Admiral. Put her through." Admiral Patel appeared on screen again, and this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a row of human military officers, all wearing expressions of grim determination. "Admiral Kethvar," she began, "your time is up. You've spent the last 47 minutes conducting what we can only interpret as hostile reconnaissance of our defensive installations. Since you've chosen not to provide the explanations we requested, we're now treating you as an invasion force. Admiral Patel, please, you have exactly 60 seconds to begin an immediate withdrawal from human space, or we will open fire." "I want to be very clear about this, Admiral. We are not bluffing, we are not posturing, and we are not intimidated by your technology. Humanity has spent its entire history fighting for survival, and we've gotten very, very good at it." Kethvar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service. Genuine fear. Not fear of death. His ships could easily outrun anything the humans might have. But fear of the unknown. Fear of a species that responded to first contact with immediate military threats. Fear of beings who seemed to have anticipated and prepared for this exact scenario. 60 seconds, Admiral," Patel repeated. "I suggest you start moving." Kethvar looked around his command center one more time, taking in the faces of his crew. All of them were staring at him with expressions of confusion and growing alarm. They had never been in a situation like this before. None of them knew what to do when the primitive species started making credible threats. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "All ships begin immediate withdrawal to the edge of the system, maintain defensive posture, and prepare for possible pursuit." As the 12 ships of the Galactic Council began their retreat from human space, Admiral Patel watched from the bridge of Earth's most advanced warship. Around her, her officers monitored the alien withdrawal with professional competence. "Think they'll be back?" asked Commander Rodriguez. "Oh, they'll definitely be back," Patel replied, "but next time they won't be making the mistake of thinking we're primitive." She turned to face the tactical display showing the retreating alien fleet. "When they do come back, they're going to discover something that no other species in this galaxy has ever had to learn." "What's that, ma'am?" Admiral Patel's smile was sharp and dangerous. "That humanity doesn't just survive, we win." The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed many historic moments over its 3,000-year existence, but never anything quite like this. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive amphitheater, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. Today, however, the beauty of interspecies cooperation was overshadowed by something unprecedented: fear. High Chancellor Morthan of the Ethereal Collective called the emergency session to order with a gesture of his elongated crystalline fingers. His species had served as mediators and peacekeepers for nearly a millennium, their naturally empathic abilities making them ideal for resolving conflicts between radically different forms of life. But today, even Morthan's usual serene composure showed cracks. "Fellow beings of the Council," His voice resonated through the chamber's translation matrix, reaching every delegate in their native language. "We gather today to address a situation unlike any in our recorded history. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Peacekeeping Forces will present his report on the attempted first contact with the species known as humans." Admiral Kethvar rose from the Zephyrian delegation section, his forearms moving in traditional gestures of respect. Despite his species' reputation for unflappable military precision, those who knew him could see the subtle signs of stress in his posture. "Honored counselors," he began, 48 hours ago, my fleet approached the human homeworld following standard first contact protocols. What we encountered defied every precedent in our collective experience." The massive display screens around the chamber lit up with tactical readouts from the human solar system. Gasps and exclamations in dozens of languages filled the air as the representatives saw the scope of humanity's hidden military installations. "As you can see," Kethvar continued, "the humans had not only detected our preliminary surveys but had spent months preparing for our arrival. More troubling, they responded to our peaceful overtures with immediate threats of military action." Representative Zixera of the Molten Core Confederation raised one of her lava-heated appendages. "Admiral, surely you're exaggerating. A pre-spaceflight species cannot have constructed installations of this magnitude. I assure you, Representative, the data is accurate. Our deep scans confirmed over 300 weapons platforms throughout their system, many disguised as civilian installations. Furthermore, their technology appears to operate on principles unknown to galactic science." A wave of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. Ambassador Quelleth of the Hive Mind Collective stood, her insectoid form clicking with agitation. "This is impossible. No species develops military capabilities before establishing basic space infrastructure. It violates the fundamental patterns of technological evolution." "Nevertheless," Kethvar replied, "the evidence is before you. The humans have somehow achieved massive military capabilities while appearing to maintain primitive space technology." Chancellor Morthon gestured for order. "Admiral, what was your assessment of their actual threat capability?" Kethvar's mandibles clicked with what a species used to indicate uncertainty. "Counselor, I confess that our standard assessment protocols proved inadequate. The humans demonstrated sensor capabilities that should not exist at their technological level. They detected our cloaked survey missions. They tracked our fleet movements in real time. Most concerning, they showed no fear whatsoever of our superior technology." This last statement caused an outright uproar in the chamber. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking simultaneously, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that overwhelmed even the advanced translation systems. Dr. Veltar of the Academic Union, a species known for their analytical approach to everything, stood and waited for quiet before speaking. "Admiral, in your professional opinion, were the humans actually capable of carrying out their threats?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Kethvar looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had trusted Zephyrian military assessment for centuries. "I cannot say with certainty," he admitted. "Their weapons technology is based on principles not found in any of our databases. Our tactical computers could not provide threat assessments because they had no reference points for comparison." Senator Thilan of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance spoke up. "Surely, Admiral, you're not suggesting that a species we've only just discovered could pose a genuine threat to the combined might of the Galactic Council?" Before Kethvar could respond, the chamber's main display activated, showing an incoming priority transmission. Chancellor Morthon authorized the communication, and the image of Admiral Rebecca Patel appeared before the assembled representatives. The human looked exactly as she had when confronting Kethvar's fleet, confident, professional, and completely unintimidated by the fact that she was addressing the governing body of an entire galaxy. "Greetings," she said without preamble. "I am Admiral Rebecca Patel of the United Earth Defense Force. I understand you're currently discussing the recent incident in our solar system." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Never in galactic history had a non-member species directly addressed the Council. "I wanted to make sure you understood humanity's position clearly," Patel continued. "We have no interest in joining your Galactic Council. We have no desire for your technology or your guidance. What we want is very simple, to be left alone to develop as we see fit. Admiral Patel, I appreciate your feelings. Directness. However, the Council exists to ensure peaceful development for all sapient species. We cannot simply ignore the emergence of a new civilization." Patel's expression didn't change. "With respect, Chancellor, that's exactly what you're going to do. Humanity is not interested in galactic politics. We're not interested in your trade agreements or your cultural exchange programs. We're certainly not interested in being guided by species who think it's acceptable to spy on others without permission. Representative Zixara leaned forward. Young species, you cannot possibly understand the complexities of galactic civilization. There are threats in this galaxy that require cooperation to address. Are you referring to threats like yourselves? Patel asked bluntly. Because from our perspective, the only threat we've encountered so far is a group of aliens who conducted months of unauthorized surveillance and then showed up uninvited to make demands. The chamber erupted again, this time with sounds of indignation rather than fear. No species had ever spoken to the council with such open contempt. Ambassador Quelleth's mandibles clacked angrily. Your arrogance is astounding. The council has maintained galactic peace for 3 millennia. Maintained peace for whom? Patel shot back. You maintained peace for yourselves. You maintained peace for species willing to submit to your authority.
But you never asked anyone if they wanted your peace?
Doctor, Veltar raised a questioning appendage. Admiral Patel, surely you recognize the benefits that council membership could bring to your species? Advanced medicine, faster-than-light travel, energy technologies that could transform your civilization. Dr. Veltar, isn't it? Patel had clearly done her homework on council membership. Let me explain something about humanity that you seem to be missing. We don't want things handed to us. We want to earn them. We want to discover them for ourselves. The journey is just as important as the destination. That's inefficient and potentially dangerous, Dr. Veltar protested. Why struggle to develop technologies when proven solutions already exist? Patel's smile was cold. Because struggle makes us stronger. Because earning something makes it more valuable. Because the species that hands you everything today might decide to take it all away tomorrow. Chancellor Morthen attempted to regain control of the situation. Admiral, surely we can find some accommodation. The Council has always been flexible in its approach to new members. You're still not listening, Chancellor. We don't want to be members. We don't want accommodation. We want you to go away and leave us alone. That's impossible, Senator Thalan interjected. The Council cannot simply ignore the emergence of a potentially dangerous species. Potentially dangerous? For the first time since the transmission began, Patel's composure cracked slightly, and something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Senator, let me share something with you about human psychology. We respond very poorly to threats. We respond even more poorly to being told what we can and cannot do by strangers. She leaned forward, and her voice took on a tone that sent chills through the assembled representatives. But most importantly, we respond extremely poorly to being called dangerous by beings who won't take no for an answer. Representative Gorthel of the warrior caste, a species known for their direct approach to problems, stood and gestured aggressively. Perhaps this human needs a demonstration of why species join the council willingly. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees as Admiral Patel focused her attention on the warrior representative. Representative Gorthul, isn't it? Your species conquered 47 worlds before the Council convinced you to join their peacekeeping efforts. You understand strength, so let me speak in terms you'll comprehend. Humanity has existed for 200,000 years. In that time, we have survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and wars that consumed entire continents. We have fought each other with stones and spears, with swords and shields, with guns and bombs, and with weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We have never, in our entire history, had peace handed to us by outsiders. Every advancement we've made, we've earned through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Every problem we've faced, we've solved through determination and ingenuity. We are a species that has spent its entire existence becoming very, very good at survival. The warrior representative's aggressive posture had gradually shifted to something more defensive as Patel spoke. So when you suggest that humanity needs a demonstration of your strength, she continued, what you're really suggesting is that we need to demonstrate why every alien species in this galaxy should be afraid of us. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. After several minutes, Chancellor Morthon spoke quietly. Admiral Kethvar, in your professional opinion, was that a threat? Kethvar looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives who had never before encountered a species that rejected everything the council represented. Counselor, he said finally, I believe that was a promise. Dr. Veltar activated his personal data console and began accessing historical files. Counselors, I've been reviewing the available data on human development patterns. There are some disturbing trends. Explain, Chancellor Morthan requested. Human history is an unbroken chain of warfare and conflict resolution through superior violence. They have never achieved peace through diplomacy alone. Every major advancement in their society has been driven by military necessity or competitive pressure. Surely that's typical of developing species, Senator Thalan protested. No, Senator. Most species develop diplomacy and cooperation as primary tools for advancement. Humans appear to have developed cooperation as a means of conducting more efficient warfare. Representative Zixara's molten form bubbled with agitation. Are you suggesting they're a naturally aggressive species? Worse, Dr. Reeve, Veltar replied. I'm suggesting they're a naturally competitive species. Aggression can be reasoned with, redirected, or controlled. Competition is a fundamental drive. They don't fight because they're angry. They fight because they want to win. Ambassador Quellet's hive mind processed this information with characteristic speed. Dr. Vassaris Spanderisis. Veltar, what does this mean for Council policy regarding humanity? The academic's response chilled the chamber. Counselors, every species in galactic history has either joined the Council voluntarily or been convinced to join through demonstrations of superior capability. We have never encountered a species that simply refused to participate in galactic civilization. More importantly, he continued, we have never encountered a species that appears to have developed their entire technological base around the assumption that they would eventually face superior enemies. Chancellor Morthon's crystalline form dimmed with concern. Are you suggesting that humanity has been preparing for this encounter since they developed spaceflight? I'm suggesting something far more troubling, Chancellor. Based on their defensive installations and their behavior patterns, I believe humanity has been preparing for this encounter since they developed intelligence. The implications of this statement settled over the chamber like a shroud. Every representative understood what Dr. Veltar was suggesting. They had encountered a species that had evolved specifically to fight against overwhelming odds. Representative Gorthal spoke quietly, his earlier aggression replaced by something approaching respect. Counselors, my species understands warfare. We know what it looks like when a civilization prepares for conquest. This is not that... What is it then? Chancellor Morthon asked. This is what it looks like when a civilization prepares for survival against any possible threat. The humans haven't built a military force designed to conquer others. They've built a military force designed to ensure that no one can conquer them. Senator Thalan struggled with the implications. But surely they understand that cooperation is more beneficial than isolation? Dr. Veltar called up additional data on his console. Senator, human history suggests they view cooperation as a temporary alliance of convenience. They cooperate when it serves their interests, but they never surrender their independence to achieve it. What are you recommending, Dr. Veltar? Chancellor Morthon asked. The academic looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, taking in the faces of beings who had never before encountered a problem they couldn't solve through diplomacy or superior technology. Counselors, I recommend we do exactly what the humans have requested. We leave them alone. The shocked silence that followed was broken by Representative Gorthul. Dr. Veltar speaks wisdom. My people know something about fighting against superior numbers. The species that win those fights are not the ones you want to provoke unnecessarily. Are you all seriously suggesting that the most advanced civilization in galactic history should retreat from a single primitive world? Representative Zixara demanded. Admiral Kethvar spoke for the final time. Representative, with respect, after what I observed in the human solar system, I'm no longer certain which civilization is more advanced. 6 months after the Council's decision to maintain a careful distance from human space, Dr. Veltar found himself aboard the research vessel Infinite Inquiry, stationed at the very edge of what humanity had declared to be their sovereign territory. The Academic Union had convinced the Council that understanding this unprecedented species required careful, long-term observation. What they had discovered was far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. Dr. Veltar called Research Assistant Nixala from her monitoring station. We're receiving another burst transmission from the human deep space network. The elderly academic moved his hover chair closer to the communication console, his aged form showing the strain of months spent trying to understand a species that defied every known pattern of development. Same encryption as before? He asked. No, sir. This appears to be a new protocol entirely. The humans seem to be upgrading their communication systems every few weeks. Dr. Veltar made a note in his research log. It was yet another anomaly in an ever-growing list. Most species took decades or even centuries to make significant improvements to their technology. Humans appeared to be doing it in real time, as if they were constantly adapting to some perceived threat. Sir, Nixala continued, I'm also detecting increased activity in their outer system installations. It looks like they're expanding their defensive grid. Show me. The main display activated, revealing a tactical map of the human solar system. 6 months ago, the humans had possessed approximately 300 weapons platforms. Today, the count was approaching 800, and new installations were appearing almost daily. How is this possible? Dr. Veltar muttered to himself. They shouldn't have the industrial capacity for expansion at this rate. Sir, there's something else. We've been analyzing the construction patterns, and we've found some very unusual characteristics. Explain. Nixala highlighted several groups of installations on the display. The new defensive platforms aren't just being built in their home systems, sir. They're being placed along potential approach routes from every major galactic civilization. Dr. Home C9. Veltar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Are you telling me they're preparing for war with the entire galaxy? It's worse than that, sir. Based on the positioning and coverage patterns, they're not preparing for war. They're preparing for invasion. Multiple simultaneous invasions from different directions. The implications were staggering. Somehow, in the span of 6 months, humanity had not only expanded their military capabilities, but had done so based on strategic analysis of threats they had never actually encountered. They were preparing for attack scenarios that only someone with access to detailed galactic intelligence could have conceived. Nixala, have we detected any evidence that humans have infiltrated galactic civilization? Spies, stolen data, anything that might explain their strategic knowledge? No, sir. All our monitoring indicates they've remained completely isolated. But, sir, there's something else you need to see. The display changed to show a series of intercepted human communications. The text had been translated into standard galactic script, but the content was deeply unsettling. These are internal human military communications, Nixala explained. We've been monitoring them to understand their expansion plans. But, sir, they're not expanding randomly. They're following what they call xenological threat assessment protocols. Dr. Velta read through the communications with growing alarm. The humans hadn't just been building defenses. They had been systematically analyzing every known galactic species and developing specific countermeasures for each one. They've somehow obtained detailed information about Zephyrian ship design and developed weapons specifically designed to penetrate Zephyrian armor, Nixala continued. They've created biological warfare countermeasures for every known organic species. They've developed electromagnetic pulse weapons designed specifically to disrupt ethereal technology. But how could they possibly know about these things? That's what's most troubling, sir. Based on the timestamps, they began developing these countermeasures before first contact ever occurred. Dr. Veltar stared at the data in disbelief. The humans had somehow anticipated the specific characteristics of species they had never met and prepared countermeasures for technologies they shouldn't have known existed. Sir, there's more. We've also intercepted what appear to be human psychological warfare studies. They're analyzing the social structures and behavioral patterns of every galactic species. Show me. The display filled with human research documents that demonstrated a terrifying level of insight into galactic civilization. The humans had somehow deduced the hierarchical nature of Zephyrian society and identified specific pressure points that could be exploited to create social disorder. They had analyzed the hive mind structure of the collective and developed strategies for disrupting their neural links. They had even identified weaknesses in ethereal empathic abilities and created methods for psychological manipulation. Dr. Veltar, Nixala said quietly, I don't think they're just preparing for war. I think they're preparing to win. Before Dr. Veltar could respond, the ship's proximity alarms began sounding. Commander Thexiel's voice echoed through the research vessel. All stations, we have an unidentified contact approaching our position. Configuration unknown, but it's definitely artificial. Dr. Velter and Nixala rushed to the bridge, where they found the crew staring at the main display in confusion. The approaching object appeared to be a small human spacecraft, but it was unlike anything in their database. Commander, Dr. Veltar said, are we in violation of human territorial boundaries? No, sir. We're well outside their declared sovereignty zone. But this ship has somehow appeared without triggering any of our detection systems. The human vessel continued its approach, moving with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for their supposedly primitive technology. When it reached communication range, a transmission came through on standard diplomatic frequencies. Galactic Research Vessel, Infinite Inquiry. This is Captain Maria Santos of the U.S. Observer. Request permission to come aboard for diplomatic discussions. Commander Thexel looked at Dr. Veltar in confusion. Sir, how did they know our ship's name? How did they even know we were here? Before anyone could answer, Captain Santos continued her transmission. Dr. Veltar, we need to talk. There are some things about humanity that you need to understand before you file your report with the Council. The silence on the bridge was deafening. The human had not only detected their presence, but had identified their mission and their personnel. Commander, Dr. Veltar said finally. Grant permission for the human representative to come aboard. 20 minutes later, Captain Maria Santos stepped into the research vessel's main conference room. She was a small woman by human standards, but she carried herself with the same confident authority that had characterized Admiral Patel during the Council transmission. Dr. Veltar noted that she appeared completely comfortable in the alien environment, showing none of the nervousness or curiosity that usually characterized first-time visitors to galactic technology. Dr. Veltar, she began without preamble, I understand you've been monitoring our activities for the past 6 months. That is correct, Captain. The Academic Union is attempting to understand your species' unusual development patterns. And what conclusions have you reached? Dr. Veltar gestured to the data displays around the conference room. Captain, your species appears to be preparing for military conflict with the entire galactic community. Moreover, you seem to possess detailed knowledge of galactic civilization that should be impossible for an isolated species to obtain. Captain Santos nodded. You're right on both counts, Doctor. We're preparing for conflict, and we do have extensive knowledge of galactic civilization. How is that possible? Because, Dr. Veltar, you're not the first galactic civilization we've encountered. The statement hit the conference room like a physical blow. Dr. Veltar felt his certainty about everything he thought he knew crumbling. What do you mean? Captain Santos activated a small device, and a holographic display appeared above the conference table. It showed star charts that included regions of space unknown to galactic cartographers. 40,000 years ago, humanity achieved interstellar flight through methods very different from yours. We spread throughout this galaxy and several others, establishing colonies and studying the various species we encountered.
That's impossible, Doctor.
Veltar protested. Our archaeological surveys show no evidence of advanced civilization in this region 40,000 years ago. That's because we're very good at hiding, Doctor. It's a survival trait we developed early in our evolution. The holographic display changed, showing images of vast human settlements in deep space, hidden colonies in asteroid fields, and research installations in the empty regions between stars. Over the centuries, we encountered dozens of species similar to your council, peaceful, cooperative, dedicated to bringing primitive species into their galactic communities. And every single time, we learned the same lesson, which was... Captain Santos's expression darkened. That peaceful, cooperative galactic civilizations inevitably become galactic empires. That species who offer to help you develop always end up demanding control over your development. That beings who claim to want only friendship eventually decide what friendship requires of you. Dr. Veltar felt the foundation of his worldview shifting. Are you saying the Council is not what it appears to be? I'm saying the Council is exactly what it appears to be, Doctor. A collection of species who have convinced themselves that their way of doing things is the only correct way, who believe that their values should be universal values, who assume that their definition of peace is the only definition that matters. But the Council has maintained galactic stability for 3 millennia. The Council has maintained galactic conformity for 3 millennia, Santos corrected. There's a difference. She manipulated the holographic display again, showing images of space battles and destroyed worlds. Dr. Fowle, Veltar, what do you think happens to species who refuse to join galactic civilization? What happens to beings who want to develop their own way, at their own pace? The academic found himself unable to answer. In 3,000 years of Council history, there were no records of species refusing membership. He had always assumed that was because the benefits were so obvious that no rational species would decline. They disappear, Doctor. They become footnotes in galactic history. Primitive species that destroyed themselves before they could be saved. Extinct civilizations that prove why galactic guidance is necessary. Are you suggesting the Council deliberately destroys non-compliant species? I'm stating it as fact, Dr. Veltar. We've watched it happen 17 times. The pattern is always the same. First contact, invitation to join, refusal. Economic pressure, isolation. Military intervention to restore order or prevent a threat to galactic peace. Dr. Veltar's mind reeled with the implications. If Santos was telling the truth, then everything he believed about galactic civilization was a lie. Why are you telling me this? Because humanity learned a long time ago that the only way to deal with galactic civilizations is from a position of absolute strength. You can't negotiate with beings who believe they know what's best for everyone. You can't reason with species who think their way of life is the only valid one. So, you've been preparing for war? We've been preparing for survival, Doctor. The difference is important. Santos stood and moved to the conference room's observation window, looking out at the stars. Humanity spent 40,000 years watching galactic civilizations rise and fall. We learned that peaceful contact is a luxury that only the strong can afford. What are you going to do? What we've always done, Dr. Veltar. Whatever it takes to remain free. Dr. Veltar looked at the small human woman and realized he was seeing something unprecedented in galactic history, a representative of a species that had grown beyond the need for galactic civilization and had chosen to reject it entirely. "Captain, what do you want me to tell the Council?" Santos turned back to face him, and for the first time since her arrival she smiled. But it was not a warm expression. "Tell them the truth, Doctor. Tell them that humanity has been watching them for 40,000 years. Tell them that we know exactly what kind of peace they offer and exactly what it costs. Tell them that every weapon we've built, every defense we've prepared, every strategy we've developed has been specifically designed to counter their particular form of galactic civilization. And tell them that the next time they send ships into human space, they won't be going home." Veltar's report to the Galactic Council created the greatest crisis in 3,000 years of interstellar civilization. For 72 hours, the Grand Chamber had been in continuous emergency session as representatives struggled to process information that challenged everything they believed about their place in the universe. High Chancellor Morthan stood before the assembled delegates, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion and stress. In his long life, he had mediated conflicts between dozens of species, but never had he faced a situation where the very foundations of galactic society were under question. "Fellow councilors," he began, his empathic abilities picking up the waves of fear and confusion radiating from every delegation, "we must reach a decision regarding the human situation. Dr. Veltar's intelligence suggests that humanity represents a threat unlike any we have previously encountered. Representative Gorthal of the warrior caste stood, his massive form imposing even among the diverse assembly. "Chancellor, my people have spent the past 3 days analyzing the tactical implications of Dr. Veltar's report. If the humans possess the capabilities they claim, then traditional military intervention is not viable. Explain your assessment, Representative." "The humans have had 40,000 years to study our military doctrines, our ship designs, our tactical preferences, and our technological limitations. They've prepared specific countermeasures for every known galactic technology. More critically, they've done so while remaining completely hidden from our surveillance. Ambassador Queleth's hive mind processed this information with characteristic speed. Representative Gorthal, are you suggesting that humanity is militarily superior to the combined forces of the Council? I'm suggesting something more troubling, Ambassador. I'm suggesting that humanity has evolved beyond the need for military superiority. They've achieved something that no galactic civilization has ever accomplished. They've made themselves effectively unconquerable. Senator Thalan of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance struggled with the implications. But surely there must be some way to reach an accommodation. The Council has always found peaceful solutions to interspecies conflicts. Veltar, who had been silent during most of the debate, finally spoke. "Senator, I don't think you understand what we're dealing with. The humans aren't opposed to our policies or our methods. They're opposed to our existence." "That's absurd," Senator Thalan protested. "No species could oppose the very concept of galactic civilization. Senator, humanity doesn't just reject membership in the Council. They reject the legitimacy of the Council itself. They view galactic civilization as inherently predatory and expansionist. From their perspective, we're not peacekeepers. We're conquerors who have convinced ourselves that conquest is kindness." The chamber erupted in outraged voices as representatives from dozens of species expressed their indignation at this characterization. Chancellor Morthan called for order, but the emotional turmoil was so intense that his empathic abilities were overwhelmed. Representative Zixera of the Molten Core Confederation finally managed to make herself heard above the chaos. "Dr. Veltar, these accusations are preposterous. The Council has brought peace and prosperity to thousands of worlds. We've eliminated war, disease, and poverty throughout the galaxy." "Representative Zixara, Dr. Chernatava," Veltar replied calmly. "We've eliminated those things for species willing to accept our solutions. What we've never asked is whether those species wanted our solutions or whether they might have preferred to develop their own." "But our solutions work," Zixara protested. "Our technology, our medicine, our social systems have proven their effectiveness across hundreds of different species." "And that, Representative, is exactly what the humans are afraid of." Before anyone could respond, the Chamber's communication system activated with an incoming priority transmission. Chancellor Morthan authorized the link, and once again Admiral Rebecca Patel appeared before the assembled council. This time, however, she was not alone. Behind her stood a group of humans wearing uniforms that none of the galactic representatives recognized. More troubling, the background visible on the transmission showed technology that was clearly far more advanced than anything in the Council's databases. "Greetings, counselors," Admiral Patel began. "I understand you've been discussing humanity's place in your galactic civilization." "Admiral Patel," Chancellor Morthan replied, "we have indeed been attempting to understand your species' position regarding Council membership in galactic law. Let me save you some time, Chancellor. Humanity's position is simple. We will not submit to galactic authority under any circumstances. We will not accept galactic oversight of our development. We will not permit galactic interference in our internal affairs. And we will not tolerate galactic presence in human space." Representative Gorthel leaned forward. "Admiral, your demands are unprecedented. No species in galactic history has claimed absolute sovereignty." "Representative Gorthul, no species in galactic history has had the option. Every civilization you've encountered has been dependent on galactic technology for survival." "Humanity is not, Doctor," Veltar spoke up. "Admiral, our understanding is that humanity has been monitoring galactic civilization for 40,000 years. If this is accurate, then you've had extensive time to evaluate our methods and our results. Surely you can acknowledge the benefits of galactic cooperation." Admiral Patel's expression became cold. "Dr. Veltar, we've indeed been watching galactic civilization for a very long time. We've seen species that chose cooperation. We've also seen species that chose independence. Would you like to know what happened to the independent ones?" "Of course," Dr. Veltar replied. The transmission display changed, showing star charts of regions that were not in any galactic database. As the delegates watched, the charts highlighted dozens of star systems marked with symbols indicating extinct civilizations. "These were the Kethmori," Admiral Patel narrated, "a peaceful species that developed advanced agricultural technology and wanted to share it freely rather than through Council trade regulations. They were declared a threat to galactic economic stability and eliminated 15,000 years ago." The display shifted to another region, the Vexnari. They developed medical technology based on principles different from Council standard medicine. When they refused to abandon their traditional healing methods, they were quarantined for public health reasons until their civilization collapsed. More star systems appeared, each one representing a species that had vanished from galactic history. The Meltherin, who wanted to develop space travel without using Council navigation systems. The Zerani, who refused to adopt Council educational standards. The Plextari, who insisted on maintaining their traditional government structure. All of them, Admiral Patel continued, were eliminated by the same galactic civilization that now sits in judgment of humanity. All of them were destroyed by beings who convinced themselves they were acting for the greater good. The silence in the chamber was absolute. For the first time in 3,000 years, the representatives of galactic civilization were confronted with the true cost of their peace and prosperity. Chancellor Morthan found his voice first. "Admiral, even if these historical accounts are accurate, surely you understand that galactic civilization has evolved since those times. We've learned from our mistakes. Have you, Chancellor? Because, from our perspective, you're about to make exactly the same mistake again." "What do you mean? Right now, in this chamber, you're discussing what to do about the human problem? You're debating whether we can be reasoned with, controlled, or eliminated. You're treating human independence as a threat to be managed rather than a right to be respected." Admiral Patel leaned forward, and her voice took on a tone that sent chills through every representative present. "Let me be very clear about something, counselors. Humanity is not the Kethmori, we're not the Vexnari, or the Maltherin, or any of the other species you've erased from galactic history. We've had 40,000 years to prepare for this moment. We know exactly what you are, how you operate, and what you're capable of. More importantly, we know what you're not capable of." The transmission display changed again, this time showing images that made several representatives recoil in horror. Fleet engagements between human forces and ships using clearly recognizable Council technology. Battles where advanced galactic vessels were systematically destroyed by human weapons that seemed to anticipate every tactical move. "These are simulations, Admiral?" Dr. Veltar asked hopefully. "These are historical records, Doctor. 3,000 years ago, you tried to eliminate a human colony in the Kepler sector. 700 ships, representing 12 different Council species, including the finest vessels in the Zephyrian fleet." Admiral Patel's smile was predatory. "None of them went home. Representative Gorthel's warrior instincts were screaming warnings. How many casualties did humanity sustain in this engagement? None, Representative. We never fired a shot. The implications of this statement were staggering. Somehow, humanity had destroyed an entire galactic fleet without engaging in combat. How is that possible? Chancellor Morthon demanded. Because, Chancellor, humanity doesn't fight fair. We don't engage in honorable combat or observe rules of warfare. When we're threatened, we don't seek to defeat our enemies. We seek to make them cease to exist. Admiral Patel stood and the camera angle widened to reveal more of the advanced facility behind her. The technology visible in the background was clearly centuries beyond anything the Council possessed. Counselors, for the past 72 hours, you've been debating how to handle the human situation. During that same time, humanity has been monitoring your discussions and preparing our response.
What response?
Senator Thalan asked fearfully. The response we've been preparing for 40,000 years, Senator. The response we designed specifically for galactic civilizations that can't take no for an answer. The transmission display filled with tactical data showing the positions of every Council ship in the galaxy. Hundreds of thousands of vessels, from massive dreadnoughts to small patrol craft, all clearly marked and tracked in real time. We know where every one of your ships is located, Admiral Patel continued. We know their capabilities, their crew complements, and their mission parameters. We've been watching and waiting for 40 millennia, and now we're ready. Chancellor Morthon's empathic abilities were picking up terror from every delegation in the chamber. Admiral, what exactly are you prepared to do? Whatever is necessary to ensure human freedom, Chancellor. The same thing we've done every time a galactic civilization has decided that humanity needs to be managed for the greater good. Admiral Patel's final words froze the blood of every being in the chamber. We make them go away, Chancellor, permanently. The transmission ended, leaving the Grand Chamber in absolute silence. For several minutes, no representative spoke or moved. Finally, Representative Gorthal broke the silence. Counselors, I move that we immediately withdraw all Council forces to minimum safe distance from human space and declare the Sol system a prohibited zone. Seconded, came a chorus of voices from around the chamber. All in favor? Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage in the chamber rose in unanimous agreement. For the first time in galactic history, the Council had chosen retreat over diplomacy. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity watched and waited, knowing that the test had only just begun. 10 years had passed since the Council's retreat from human space, and the galaxy had learned to live with an uncomfortable truth. There was a region of space where galactic authorities simply did not apply. The Sol Prohibition Zone had become a dark spot on every star chart, a reminder that the universe still held mysteries that defied understanding. Dr. Whale, Veltar, now significantly aged but still driven by scientific curiosity, had spent the decade analyzing every scrap of data about humanity. His research had led him to conclusions that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about intelligence, evolution, and the nature of civilization itself. Today he stood in his laboratory aboard the research station Eternal Questions, staring at a holographic display that showed the results of his life's work. His assistant Nixala, now a full researcher in her own right, watched as the elderly academic prepared to present his findings to the Council. "Dr. Veltar," she said quietly, "are you certain about these conclusions?" "The implications are terrifying," Veltar finished. "Yes, I know. But the data doesn't lie, Nixala. We've been asking the wrong questions about humanity for 40,000 years. The hologram showed a complex timeline of galactic history, marked with points where civilizations had risen and fallen. But overlaying this standard historical record was something unprecedented, evidence of human intervention in galactic affairs spanning millennia. "The pattern is clear," Veltar continued. "Every major galactic catastrophe, every extinction event, every mysterious disappearance of a spacefaring species, humanity was involved. But, Doctor, most of these events occurred before the Council even existed. Some of them happened before any current galactic civilization had achieved spaceflight." "Exactly, Nixala. Which means humanity has been active in galactic affairs far longer than we imagined. They haven't been hiding from us. They've been managing us." Before Nixala could respond, the laboratory's communication system activated. Chancellor Morthon's image appeared on the display, his crystalline form showing signs of the stress that had marked his leadership since the human crisis began. "Dr. Veltar," the Chancellor said, "the Council is ready to receive your final report on the human situation. However, before you present your findings, there's something you need to know." "What is it, Chancellor?" "We've received a communication from Admiral Patel. She's requesting permission to address the Council directly. She says she has information that will clarify humanity's position in galactic affairs." Dr. Veltar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. After 10 years of silence, humanity was ready to speak again. That could only mean one thing. The test was over. Chancellor, I believe my research may be relevant to whatever Admiral Patel intends to tell us. Then I suggest you present both reports simultaneously. The Council convenes in 1 hour. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never felt smaller than it did when Admiral Rebecca Patel walked through its doors. For the first time in galactic history, a human being stood before the assembled representatives, and the sight was profoundly unsettling. Admiral Patel moved with the same confident authority she had displayed in every previous communication, but now her presence was physical and immediate. She wore a uniform that was both elegant and practical, clearly designed for someone accustomed to command. But more disturbing than her appearance was the fact that she was there at all. "Counselors," she said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber without any technological amplification, "thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know my presence here represents a significant departure from established protocols." Chancellor Morthon gestured with his crystalline fingers. "Admiral Patel, the Council appreciates your willingness to engage in direct dialogue. However, we must ask, how did you reach this chamber? Our security systems detected no approaching vessels." Admiral Patel smiled, and for the first time since humanity had entered galactic consciousness, the expression seemed genuinely warm. "Chancellor, I've been in this chamber many times before. In fact, I've been present for most of the major decisions the Council has made over the past several decades." The silence that followed was deafening. Representative Gorthul was the first to find his voice. "That's impossible. The chamber is continuously monitored and secured against intrusion." Representative Gorthul, it's only impossible if you assume that human technology operates within the same parameters as galactic science. We've been telling you for 10 years that we're different. Perhaps it's time you understood what that actually means. Dr. Veltar stood from his position in the scientific advisory section. "Admiral, if I may, I believe my research may provide some context for the discussion." "By all means, Doctor. I think the Council would benefit from hearing your conclusions." Dr. Veltar activated the chamber's main display, showing his timeline of galactic history with its overlay of suspected human involvement. "Counselors, over the past 10 years I've been analyzing patterns in galactic development. What I've discovered is that human involvement in galactic affairs extends far beyond our initial estimates. The timeline highlighted dozens of historical events from the mysterious collapse of the Progenitor Empire 20,000 years ago to the equally mysterious disappearance of the Void Seekers just 3 centuries past. In every case," Dr. Veltar continued, "the official records show natural causes, internal conflicts, or unexplained phenomena. But when analyzed as a complete pattern, these events show clear signs of external intervention by a technologically superior force." Ambassador Queleth's mandibles clicked with agitation. "Veltar, are you suggesting that humanity has been manipulating galactic history for millennia?" "I'm stating it as fact, Ambassador. But what's more important is understanding why." Admiral Patel stepped forward. "Dr. Veltar has done excellent work, but his analysis is incomplete. Would you like me to fill in the missing pieces?" Chancellor Morthon nodded, his empathic abilities picking up waves of anticipation and dread from every delegation in the chamber. "The truth, counselors, is that humanity has been responsible for every major transition in galactic civilization for the past 50,000 years. The fall of the Progenitor Empire, the rise of the First Council, the Great War of Expansion, the establishment of the current council system, all of it was orchestrated by humanity." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations as representatives struggled to process this information. Senator Thalan managed to make herself heard above the chaos. "Why? Why would humanity manipulate galactic development?" "Because, Senator, we learned very early in our development that galactic civilizations follow predictable patterns. They rise, they expand, they become complacent, they stagnate, and they eventually collapse under their own weight. Left to natural development, galactic civilizations typically last between 5,000 and 8,000 years before destroying themselves." Admiral Patel activated a device, and the chamber's display changed to show a new timeline spanning hundreds of thousands of years. Humanity achieved true galactic civilization over 200,000 years ago. "We face the same choice that every advanced species eventually faces: expand until we dominate everything, or find another way." "What other way?" Chancellor Morthon asked. "We chose to become gardeners instead of conquerors, Chancellor. We learned to guide galactic development in ways that promote stability and growth without stagnation." Representative Zixara's molten form bubbled with confusion. But Admiral, if humanity is so advanced, why have you remained hidden? Why not take your rightful place as galactic leaders? Admiral Patel's expression became sad. Because, Representative, leadership inevitably becomes tyranny. Power inevitably becomes corruption. Every species that has achieved galactic dominance has eventually become everything they originally fought against. So we developed a different approach. We became the force that prevents any single civilization from dominating the galaxy for too long. We encourage growth, development, and expansion. But when a galactic civilization becomes too rigid, too controlling, or too convinced of its own righteousness, we encourage change. Dr. Veltar looked at his research data with new understanding. The pattern isn't random extinction events. It's systematic population control on a galactic scale. Very good, Doctor. Humanity learned to be evolution in action. We ensure that galactic civilization continues to grow and change by preventing any one form from becoming permanently dominant. Representative Gorthol's warrior instincts were finally beginning to understand. The current council, we're not the first galactic government, are we? You're the 14th, Representative. Each one has lasted between 3,000 and 5,000 years before becoming too rigid to adapt. At that point, we encourage transition to new forms of organization. The implications hit the chamber like a physical force. The council that had believed itself to be the culmination of galactic civilization was actually just the latest in a series of temporary arrangements. Senator Thalen spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. How long do we have? That depends, Senator. The current council has lasted approximately 3,000 years. Based on historical patterns, you have perhaps 500 to 1,000 years before natural stagnation makes change inevitable. But, Admiral Patel continued, humanity has been observing some concerning trends in recent council behavior. The increasing rigidity of membership requirements, the growing intolerance of alternative development paths, the tendency to view non-conforming species as problems to be solved rather than alternatives to be respected. Chancellor Morthon's crystalline form had dimmed to almost transparent. You're evaluating us for replacement. We're evaluating you for evolution, Chancellor. The question is whether the Council can adapt to changing galactic conditions, or whether it will follow the same pattern as its predecessors. What kind of changes? Dr. Sutton, Veltar asked. The galaxy is entering a phase where rigid central authority will become counterproductive. The number of spacefaring species is growing exponentially. Technological development is accelerating. Cultural diversity is expanding beyond the Council's ability to manage through standardization. The next phase of galactic civilization will need to be based on cooperation between truly independent species rather than integration into a single system. Species will need to be free to develop their own solutions to galactic challenges. Representative Gorthel understood first. You're saying the Council system is becoming obsolete? I'm saying the Council system has served its purpose and is now hindering further development. The question is whether the Council can transform itself voluntarily or whether it will need to be encouraged to change. The silence that followed was filled with the weight of galactic history. Every representative understood that they were witnessing a moment that would determine the future of civilization itself. Chancellor Morthon finally spoke. Admiral, what would you recommend? Begin the process of voluntary dissolution, Chancellor. Transition from a centralized authority to a voluntary confederation of independent species. Eliminate membership requirements and cultural standardization programs. Allow species to develop according to their own values and preferences. And if we refuse? Admiral Patel's expression became cold again. Then you'll go the way of the 13 galactic councils that came before you. Quietly, cleanly, and with minimal disruption to overall galactic development. How long do we have to decide? You have as long as you need, Chancellor. Humanity has learned patience over the millennia, but understand that the decision itself is really just a choice between evolution and extinction. Admiral Patel turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and counselors? The next time you're tempted to think of humanity as primitive or dangerous, remember this. We're the reason galactic civilization exists at all. We're the reason any of you are here to have this conversation. We're not the monsters in the darkness beyond the stars. We're the gardeners who make sure the garden keeps growing. As Admiral Patel walked out of the Grand Chamber, she left behind a group of beings who suddenly understood their true place in the universe. They weren't the masters of galactic civilization. They were its temporary custodians, serving at the pleasure of a species that had learned to nurture growth through careful pruning. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Council faced a choice that would determine not just their own future, but the future of intelligence itself. And somewhere in the depths of space, humanity watched and waited, ready as always to do whatever was necessary to ensure that life, intelligence, and diversity continued to flourish among the stars. The test was over. The real work was just beginning.